Being questioned by the fine ladies and gentlemen of the law can be, shall we say, somewhat stressful. Even if you are 100% sure of your complete and total innocence, the officers with whom you're speaking usually aren't. Unfortunately, in today's age of true crime channels and armchair legal experts, many of us are laboring under the delusion that we have a pretty good grasp of the law and that should we find ourselves in the situation of having to talk to its enforcers, we would be perfectly capable of not only coming out on top, but wiping those smug smiles from their faces with our encyclopedic knowledge of obscure get-out-of-jail-free clauses that we picked up from a podcast. Sadly, many of the things that everybody thinks they know about law enforcement, such as the persistent and baffling belief that a police officer must identify themselves as such if asked, they're simply not true. And therefore, talking to the police without actually knowing what you're doing can be genuinely detrimental to your freedom. So in today's episode, we aim to help you with these potential problems. So sit back, relax, while we tell you 5 things not to do while being questioned by the police. Or if you're watching this video while you're about to be interrogated, well, hello there. Probably not such a stress-free situation, is it? But good luck. Unless you're guilty. In which case, well, let's see how it goes. Have you ever noticed how some content just doesn't want to play nice? 1 minute you're watching a series, and the next minute, it's not available in your region. Or how about those ads that follow you around like lost puppies no matter where you go online? This is where our friends at Surfshark step in. With Surfshark VPN, everything important stays private and secure. Once you're connected, Surfshark hides your activity with encryption, meaning that no one can see what you're up to. And for the travel happy or those who just want access to everything, Surfshark has over 3,200 servers in 100 countries, meaning that you can practically teleport online, hop from the UK to Japan to wherever in just a click, and stream as if you are a local. It's perfect for bypassing annoying restrictions and price discrimination tricks. And here's the best part. With one account, every device in your household gets covered. So your phone, tablet, laptop, even your smart fridge, if it fancies a VPN. No counting devices, just seamless protection. And if you ever get stuck, their 24/7 customer service is always there to help. Plus, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. Try it, love it, or get your money back. Want to give it a go? Well, head to surfshark.com/sideprojects and get 4 extra months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. It's a limited time offer, so click the link in the description and grab that special deal. Thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video, and now back to it. Given the police officers, and even the law itself, take an extremely dim view of those who lie during questioning, you'd be forgiven for thinking that you could expect some sort of reciprocity here. Sadly, that ain't the case. Not only do police officers not have to identify themselves as such when asked, as we mentioned earlier, they can, and often do, directly lie to you while you're being questioned. Let's look at a hypothetical scenario, shall we? During questioning, you're asked if you were at a certain place at a certain time, either because you were not or because you believe admitting that you were might cause you problems. You reply in the negative. Sighing with disappointment, the interviewing officer asks you exactly the same question, only this time they tell you that they have eyewitnesses and fingerprints indicating that you were there. Would you, the officer asks, like to change your answer? The problem you have here is that it is perfectly legal for the interviewing officer to lie to you about this. Obviously, if the case were to go to court, then this evidence would not only have to exist, but be submitted as official evidence in the trial. However, lying about the existence of evidence to persuade a subject to cooperate is perfectly legal. Similarly, if you're one of a group of suspects being interviewed separately, nothing prevents your interviewing officer from telling you that your accomplice folded like a cheap suit and has already told them everything and that you're only making it worse for yourself. According to Jag Litwack, a criminal defense attorney in Phoenix who spoke extensively to Lifehacker about the various lies police can tell you, quote, "The police may try to trick you into admitting that you might have been in a certain place at a certain time. If you're uncertain, don't give them an inch. You don't remember what you ate for breakfast last week, so if the cops say you were on video and you don't remember if that could be true, don't agree or disagree, stay silent." He adds, "Courts will tolerate some form of police gamesmanship so long as the games do not overcome a suspect's will and induce a confession that is not truly voluntary." The quote ends. So the police are even allowed to lie about search warrants, albeit to a much more limited degree. Although lying about the existence of a warrant to gain access to a property and conduct a search is against the law, implying that a warrant has been applied for and will arrive shortly in order to coerce a suspect into cooperating with a warrantless search is not only legal, but a tactic that is frequently employed. Litwack advises that you should refuse entry until you can see concrete proof of the current and active search warrant. Be careful though, assuming that the warrant is valid, refusing entry is itself a criminal offense. The use of hypothetical situations can be an incredibly useful tool. We've already used one in this video to explain our advice, and we will doubtless use several more before we're done here today. Unfortunately, for the unsuspecting interviewee, the police are well aware of this powerful tool and frequently use it as part of standard interrogation techniques. A hypothetical question can be used in several ways, but the most common usage is to get you to agree to something in principle, even if you claim to have no knowledge of a particular event. An example of this tactic might go like this. Wouldn't you agree that punching somebody in the face 3 times in rapid succession because they tried to steal your mobile phone would be an overly excessive response? If by chance you were foolish enough to say that you did in fact agree and it later transpired that you had done just that, then it might be suggested that you yourself agreed that you'd used excessive force. Another slight variation on this might involve questions such as, what do you think might have happened? Or why do you think we want to talk to you today? Although not technically hypothetical questions, they are certainly leading questions. Questions that are, in short, designed to prompt you to volunteer information that the police are not yet aware of and which might incriminate you. It is generally recommended that you don't answer such questions without legal representation, instead politely declining to speculate on matters of which you have no knowledge. One particularly tragic example of such tactics being used took place in 1989 when police used hypothetical and leading questions along with sleep deprivation and denial of food to secure what would subsequently turn out to be a false confession in the case of the Central Park jogger, a brutal sexual assault carried out on a 28-year-old woman who was out for an early morning run. According to an article on History.com, quote, "The attack was so severe, she lost 75% of her blood, suffering a severe skull fracture, among other injuries. The woman, identified in the media as the Central Park jogger until she made her name public in 2003, had been bludgeoned with a rock, tied up, and left for dead." As you can imagine, this attack caused a huge amount of public outrage, and the police were very keen to close the case as quickly as possible, quickly arresting and charging 5 Black and Latino teenagers. According to the same article, quote, "But in 2002, after serving sentences that ranged from 6 to 13 years for what then New York City Mayor Ed Koch called the crime of the century, new DNA evidence and a confession proved convicted Matias Reyes was the true lone culprit. The charges against the 5 men were vacated, and they eventually received a $41 million settlement." End quote. Obviously, there were many, many other contributing factors to this outrageous failing in the legal system, and to quote them all would require another very long video. However, there is no doubt that the style of questioning was a contributing factor, and it raises a few questions as to its efficacy. Whilst many people use humor as a coping mechanism in stressful situations, doing so during a police interview could turn out to be a very bad idea. Remember, chances are that this is the first time that the interviewing officer has ever spoken to you. They do not know you as well as your friends and family, and may, accidentally of course, misinterpret your attempt at an icebreaker. At best, it could seem as if you're not treating the situation with the seriousness it deserves. At worst, depending on what you say, it might even be taken as a confession of guilt. If you're sitting at home thinking, don't be ridiculous, surely the police aren't that clueless, then allow us to introduce you the unfortunate story of Richard Jewell. Originally hailed as a hero after discovering an unexploded pipe bomb at the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta and helping to evacuate as many people as possible, Jewell quickly became the #1 suspect following sensationalist reporting by various news outlets and a questionable interview conducted by the FBI. During this interview, Jewell attempted to lighten the mood with humor, allegedly saying things like, "If I were a real bomber, I wouldn't have drawn attention to the bomb until it had gone off." This, coupled with the fact that the FBI had seemingly already decided that he was the culprit, led to serious misinterpretation. The agents reportedly convinced him to answer questions a certain way, claiming that the video was merely being recorded for training purposes. This approach quickly convinced the public that this entirely innocent man was the mastermind behind the bombing. Although Jewell was eventually cleared of any involvement and successfully obtained damages from both the FBI and various news outlets, his life was never quite the same again. Even today, there are still people who believe he was guilty. Remember, don't make jokes when you're talking to the police. Imagine you've been arrested by the police and are now sitting in an interrogation room desperately trying to convince them of your innocence. Up until this point, your efforts are not going well. You have patiently explained to the officers how you have no idea how those 2 kilograms of cocaine ended up in your luggage, but you can just tell by looking at their faces that they don't believe you. As a general feeling of unease sets in, and you realize that despite having eaten fairly recently, you're absolutely starving, you wish there was some sort of magical device the police could use to prove your innocence or lack thereof. As if reading your mind, one of the officers says, "All right then, if you're telling the truth, then you will surely have no objections to taking a polygraph test." Now, being 100% sure of your own innocence, you readily agree and the test is carried out. Inexplicably, when the results come back, the officers inform you that the test indicates you've been lying to them all this time and that you're now in serious trouble. But how could this possibly have happened? Well, the trouble is that despite what you might have been told, polygraph tests are often not much more accurate than flipping a coin when it comes to discerning someone's guilt, especially if that someone may be experiencing withdrawal symptoms from a lack of access to their cocaine supply. Over the years, countless individuals have been convicted in part due to the results of these tests and later found to be entirely innocent, and that is without taking into account the fact that according to the Innocence Project, polygraph tests are unreliable and have led to numerous wrongful convictions. Although polygraph tests have been outlawed by many countries with even the barest sliver of legal moral rectitude, they are still used in various places worldwide. So if you're unfortunate enough to find yourself being questioned in one of those places, you should absolutely not accept that opportunity to prove your innocence. Movies and television shows have a lot to answer for when it comes to people misunderstanding exactly how the law works. However, there is one thing that is usually portrayed with a reasonable degree of accuracy, and that is a suspect's right to legal representation. In the United States, at least, this is covered under the Miranda rights. Quote, "The right to have an attorney present during questioning. If the suspect cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided." Sadly, the number of people who forego this right because they believe themselves smart enough to be their own attorney, or at least smarter than a police officer, is truly staggering. Whilst carrying out research for this video, we briefly spoke with a criminal barrister in the UK, and even she, a proven expert in the various nuances of the law, said that she would take the offer of legal representation during an interview. The reason she gave? Regardless of the circumstances, police interviews can be stressful. No matter your grasp of the law, passing up the opportunity to have a second pair of eyes and ears on your side is simply foolish. So, how do the police benefit if you don't choose to be accompanied by a legal representative, and how might they subtly persuade you not to? As for the former, the answers are fairly obvious. Not having an expert in the law watching over your shoulder allows them to pursue, for want of a better phrase, more deceptive lines of questioning that may cause a suspect to inadvertently incriminate themselves. Or take the cutting of a deal. Unless you're really familiar with other similar cases, it's quite unlikely that you would know with complete certainty whether or not the offer of clemency in exchange for information is actually a good one. Now, we know that the police are obligated to tell you that you have the right to an attorney, but how might they try to persuade you that you don't really need one? Well, this usually takes the form of playing down the situation. Rather than inviting you in for an official interview, they might say something like, "Would you mind popping down to the station for a quick chat?" Or, as we have it on good authority from a member of our team here, they might play on the fact that they know you have more important things to do than sit around in a police station all day. For instance, while we know you're aware of your right to legal aid, if you wait for someone to arrive, you could be here for 5 or 6 hours. On the other hand, if you just have a quick chat with us now, you could be back at work within the hour. You see how it works? They are, of course, only trying to cause you as little inconvenience as possible. Absolutely. Regardless of the friendly language, informal terminology, and just looking out for your best interests, it's important to remember that at the end of the day, the police have a job to do, and they will do anything they can to make that job easier without actually breaking the law. Even if you completely ignore the information contained in other entries today, we implore you to listen to this one. Never waive your right to an attorney. Or as I like to say, lawyer, lawyer, lawyer.